It's interesting to see how things change so quickly. Why do I say that? Why do I emphasize that? Argentina become the first team to ever beat Brazil in a World Cup qualifying match on Brazilian soil. But all of a sudden the news ends up taking a second tier after the Lionel Scaloni press conference, where he says, I don't know if I'm going to return. I don't know my future. Now, calm down. Let's sit back and think about this. Let's repackage the entire situation here. Keep in mind, today, what is it? November 20th, 2023. Rewind back a year. Argentina lose to Saudi Arabia, ending a 36-37 match win or unbeaten streak for the Albiceleste, opening up their World Cup campaign, one of the favorites to win the World Cup. And yes, when I was on Al Jazeera, I said the same thing. I said, yeah, they're going to win the World Cup, which they ended up doing. Notice how quickly the narrative changed in Argentina. From this team is great, this team is fabulous, this team is amazing, to the narratives of the past. Messi's friends, the lineups. Again, Argentine media want to act like they're holier than thou when it comes to certain things. But at times they end up betraying a lot of the teams that they've been represented by. That was a very good example. Lionel Scaloni was part of that erosion. Keep in mind, when he came in, the only experience he had as a coach was at the Argentine under-20s. So when people were hearing the name Lionel Scaloni as the Argentine national team coach on the senior end, they're like, what? They're expecting Cholo Simeone, Pochettino. You got my drift. So when Scaloni comes in, now Argentine media, many, were saying, why do we have an apprentice as a coach? Now, we can even rewind going back to 2021, the final of the Copa America, where many in the media were saying, I hope that this team loses so we can start getting a coach that's serious. They were saying that, okay? I hope that we get a coach that's serious. Argentina ends up winning that Copa America final at Maracanã. And of course, that consolidates them. Keep in mind that Scaloni at that point was still an interim coach. He was still an interim coach. Finally, he ends up winning the first trophy that Argentina had won nearly 28 years. And to make matters even more interesting, they end up winning the Finalissima against Italy a year later. And then, of course, as we mentioned earlier, they end up winning the World Cup in 2022. Now, there's been a lot of erosion. There's been a lot of deterioration in terms of Argentina when it comes to his relationship with Chiquitapia, when it comes to the commercial obligations that he has now. People don't mention that too much. Scaloni has to fly to the United States not frequently, but frequently enough due to commercial engagements. Keep in mind, he was here in South Florida a few months ago as part of the inauguration. He doesn't live in Argentina. He lives in Mallorca. He lives in Spain. So understand the traveling that he has to undertake in order to be able to fulfill certain obligations. He's always on the road, basically, with commercial obligations, speaking engagements, commercials that he's done, and other things that encompass his new obligations as Argentine national team coach. Keep in mind, after the World Cup, there was a few months where he was a free agent. He was a free agent. He did not sign a contract with Argentina. I think he did it back in March, if memory doesn't fail me. There's certain things, look, I'm not saying that he's going to leave. Sometimes, and let's look at it from a human perspective. Let's look at it from an individual perspective. There's things that he's going through right now. His parents aren't in the best of health. Okay? He's a human being, ladies and gentlemen, so let's call it as it is. He does have personal things that he has to deal with on top of his commercial issues, on top of being national team coach. So let's keep that in focus as well. He also has to deal with that. He's been put in situations, and I'm not going to try and get too much into it because it ends up kind of detracting or kind of veering off in another direction. But one of the biggest political tools in Argentina is the Argentine national team. When has it not been used for political gain or for some type of political chess game that's going on? If you start being familiar with Argentine politics and Argentine history, their national team has been used in several occasions as that pawn piece, and it's still not the exception to the rule. There's been a lot of times where they've been asked in recent years to use armbands for a certain cause, to use or come out on the pitch with a certain flag. Hell, as a matter of fact, let's go back to the World Cup in 2018, a match that did not happen because of not understanding global politics. Argentina remember when they were supposed to go play in Israel, friendly against Israel, right before the 2018 World Cup, and then when it gets canceled, Argentina only has one match against Haiti prior to going to the World Cup in Russia. So, and of course, there was a lot of political tinge to that. We kind of understand where that's heading. When it comes to them, when it comes to Scaloni, when it comes to Messi, when it comes to basically any of the players on this group of Argentine national team players, taking the picture, the politician that takes the picture, the entrepreneur that takes the picture. Now, how should I say this? Over the last year or so, in many parts of the world, people aren't there to cover Messi. They're there to take the picture with Messi, whether it's behind them and you're doing this and he's back there, or you taking a picture with him, if you kind of get my drift. So understand who's who in all of this. And politicians are no exception to the rule by any stretch of the imagination. They also want to take the picture with Messi because not only is it, hey, look who I was with, look who he's supporting. Whether they're right or wrong, it doesn't matter. Narrative is the one that ends up ruling at the end of the day. Let's keep that in mind. But like I said, some people want to take the picture because it's who they're covering. But then sometimes is that, and we've seen it a lot. We've seen a lot of journalists do that. So keep that in mind each and every time you see someone covering Leo Messi, covering the Argentine national team, exactly what they do and how they behave and what they're reporting. Because at the end of the day, when these athletes are asked questions, it's a free-for-all. Journalists can ask whatever. And journalists have asked whatever. So it's something very important to keep an eye on because at the end of the day, that's what ends up wearing coaches down. Because let's be honest, one of the more pressure-filled jobs at this point is the Argentine national team because the bar has been established and it's so high. And what's the expectation for Copa America? It's not to win and participate, it's to win it. Knowing that it's potentially Leo Messi's last tournament with the national team. Probably not. But it sure is for Angel Di Maria. When they resume in September, the objective is to qualify, which they're almost there basically. With 15 points, you need about 23 to basically assure yourself of a 22, I should say, for a playoff spot. Anything above that, basically you're in. So at 23 on up, you're basically in the World Cup in 2026. Argentina's expectation for 2026? Oh, let's get to quarterfinals, right? No. They have to win it. It is what it is. When you're the defending champs, you're expected to go win it yet again. And sometimes the second time around ends up being much more difficult. Being the one that's the defending champ ends up being more difficult than being the one that ends up going for it for the first time. The hunter is much easier than being the hunted. Let's put it from that perspective. Look at France. It ends up being difficult for France to repeat, as crazy as it sounds. But it's a reality. Everyone was gunning for France at the end of the day, although Argentina had all the headlines. So Scaloni has that. He understands that that's the constant pressure that he has. He also understands that there's a sense of, there's a need for renewal. Let's not kid ourselves. Alejandro Garnacho, Matias Soulé, all these younger players that start to come in, well, they have to start looking to break in at a certain point, because not only do you start looking at 2026, you start looking at 2030. Obviously, Leo Messi's not going to be there. So what do you do? Maybe Rodrigo de Paul's not there. Maybe, definitely Di Maria's not going to be there either. The older portion of that nucleus ends up fading away. So what do you do? Of course. And you start having to break up the group, a group that you've entrusted your body, your soul, your commitment, your philosophy, everything else. That ends up being something that's very interesting to delve into. Do you want to be the coach that breaks up a group that you originally constructed, that you're destroying basically what you built? Now, don't take this as me saying that he's gone. He's not. At the same time, it ends up being something very interesting where, what do you do? And I'll put it in a perspective, you and me, okay? The conditions at your job aren't the best. And mind you, I'm talking about like for like, proportionately like for like, I guess you could say. You in your job, and you have the importance of Lionel Scaloni within your corporation, within your organization. And you know certain things aren't working the way that they should be, or at least it doesn't help you optimize from a corporative standpoint. What do you do? Say, hey, I don't know. Maybe I won't come back. Maybe there's something else that's better. You know what? If it doesn't work out, there might be another place for me. Okay, I'm talking like for like. I'm not talking about our actual situation with our actual reality. I'm talking about put yourself in your actual situation, plus Lionel Scaloni's influence within your proportionate situation, with his influence. You might end up using that as a leverage point, because Scaloni has that leverage within AFA at this stage of the game. Now, if Brazil would have beaten Argentina had lost twice in a row, maybe he doesn't have that leverage. Keep in mind, he's the only Argentine coach to have won at Maracanã twice. He also won a Finalissima. He also won a World Cup. He also won a Copa America. Basically, at the national team level, Scaloni is one of the winningest, if not the winningest coach in Argentine football history, Argentine national team history. So I think that he has the shoulders to be able to bear the brunt of that. And he also has the leverage to be able to throw that out to see what ends up happening. There's been rumors, unconfirmed, that Chiqui Tapia wanted to talk to Scaloni. Scaloni apparently didn't. Does that mean it's the end? No, it doesn't. It doesn't mean one thing or the other. Do you want to play the game where he does leave? We can play that. The timing's pretty good. Excuse me. Because you still have March. You would have to start looking for a coach now. You have until December. Mind you, AFA at this stage of the game does have the money to pay a coach. And of course, I forgot and I got sidetracked. The coaching staff of Lionel Scaloni is still waiting to get paid the prize money from last year's World Cup. They haven't been paid yet, according to many sources that have emerged over the past 24 hours. So where does that leave us, ladies and gentlemen? I don't know. I honestly don't know. There's still a lot of questions to be asked. There's a lot of questions to be mentioned in terms of what this could end up entailing. I really don't know. I really don't know what this is going to be impacting. Because Scaloni on many occasions has kind of hinted that. I don't know. But there's a lot of factors that kind of say yes. There's a lot of factors that say he's probably going to be gone. So if I tell you one thing, I'd be lying. If I tell you the other thing, I might be lying too. But right now is a good time to say, you know what? Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. because there's still enough time for a new coach to take over and prepare the team for Copa America on down. Mind you, he still has a contract until 2026. So maybe it's not that easy to say goodbye just yet. But don't be the least bit surprised that if he does say goodbye, he's leaving maybe at the most perfect time possible, after doing what nobody's been able to do not once, but twice. And he can ride off into the sunset with all types of peace of mind. And not only that, knowing that he now will end up getting paid more than when Marcelo Gallardo ended up being paid at River, something that he does not earn right now with the Argentine national team. So if it's that might end up being something else, because at this point, he can be able to bargain in that particular way. But we'll see. It's going to be a very interesting story in the next couple of months to see how it ends up developing.